Welcome to Blended Scotch Reviews by Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 25 and single malt match number 5. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Monday, August 25th, 2025, where it is currently 95 degrees. A very mild August here this year. On this channel, I'm reviewing 20 plus or minus of the budget blended scotches. Some are very popular and known around the world, others are more obscure. But each whiskey gets a full review, and then after reviewing 2 whiskeys, I conduct a head-to-head match to see which whiskey is the one that I prefer. Then, if I can obtain a single malt contributor to these blends, I conduct another head-to-head matchup of the single malts. And that's where we are tonight. We have Glenfiddich14 and Shieldaig Speyside single malt, non-age stated. Glenfiddich was the contributor to Grant's that we did last time, and Shieldaig Speyside may or may not be a contributor because we don't know the distillery, right? But I've got Shieldaig Classic Blend and then the Shieldaig Single Malt Speyside. So who knows what goes into these or where they come from. Glengoyne might be one, Tamdhu might be another one. So we're just not real sure about Shieldaig's parentage, shall we say. The rules of the single malts, I don't really give an in-depth review because my focus is on the blends. So we just do this head-to-head match, but we do evaluate the single malts along the same lines that I evaluate the blends. In other words, I look at things like their bottle label, marketing, their history, their composition, the nose, taste, mouthfeel, burn finish, price, value, and availability. And so, it's basically the same type of evaluation. Now, in case there's a tie, and that has happened, I use the price, value, and availability to break the tie. Now, with the blends, I usually make a cocktail for the winner, but not so with the single malts. The winner gets nothing. And just for fun, I do try to guess which whiskey is in which glass because I use blacked out glasses such as these. Now the Glenfiddich is in glass number 1, it's on the bottom, and glass number 2 is the Shieldaig. So first of all, let's look at the history of these whiskeys. Glenfiddich14 is a Speyside. It's in the town of Dufftown, Moray, Scotland. The name means Valley of the Deer. And so you can see the stag on the bottle right there. The distillery was built by William Grant and Sons in 1886, and by 1887 they were open for business. Now, during the Prohibition years, the Grant family continued their distilling and putting away whiskey in warehouses because the philosophy was Prohibition is going to be a temporary thing. So they did not halt production. They kept on producing and storing away whiskey, and sure enough, in 1933, when the Repeal Act came through, Grant's moved in immediately to America. Now, the famous triangular bottle that you see with Grant's and with Glenfiddich was developed in 1956. In 1963, Grant's again bucked the trend of downward sales in whiskey by introducing the first single malt to the world market, Glenfiddich. Grant's also began the trend of packaging their bottles in gift tubes or tins, which this one I don't have one for. Got it without the tube, and that happens. They also began marketing their whiskey in duty-free shops like in airports because air travel in the 1960s was an increasing thing. So they foresaw that, hey, this would be a good way to sell whiskey. And sure enough, Glenfiddich became the most popular single malt in the world for a time. Today it is like in the number 3 position, I think, behind Macallan and Glenlivet. Grant's is the number 5 blended Scotch that is sold in the world. So now let's look at the history of Shieldaig Speyside. William Maxwell and Company is now called Ian MacLeod Distillers. This has the Maxwell name on the bottle, but it's Ian MacLeod is the owner. And they're owned by the Peter J. Russell family, and it's still a family-owned business. They've been around for over 80 years and created blends and bottled single malts from distilleries, the overproduction or second choice barrels, what have you. Shieldaig is one of their big brands, and Total Wine is their main retailer in America in their Spirits Direct lineup. The name Shieldaig refers to a village on the northwest coast of Scotland that is known for its herring. And so the name in Old Norse literally means Loch of the Herring. So I hope this isn't a fishy tasting whiskey. But I do get a vision of Vikings fishing for herring 1,000 years ago when I drink this. All right, so if we're going to evaluate the history of these two whiskeys, I've got to go with the Glenfiddich because the Shieldaig is, there's a history there, but it's got a little bit of murkiness to it. So there you go. Glenfiddich for the win. Composition. Glenfiddich is made there in Dufftown in the Speyside region at the Glenfiddich distillery that the Grants built, weighing in at 43% ABV and 14 years of age. Shieldaig's distillery is not known for sure, but Ian MacLeod owns Tamdhu, Speyside, and Glengoyne, so I can guess. It weighs in at 40% or 80 proof and is a non-age stated whiskey. Glenfiddich then for the win of composition. All right, price, value, and availability. Shieldaig Speyside goes for $22.99, but only at Total Wine. Glenfiddich, on the other hand, I paid about $65 for this, $64.99 at Total Wine, $68.39 at Specs, $68.99 at Goody Goody. And I actually got this through an online sale because I was looking for another whiskey, and I found it, but in order for me to get that, I had to spend $100. And the whiskey I was looking for was in the 20s, and so I had to spend $100 worth to get the whiskey. So that's where I got this, because I knew this show was coming up. So again, Glenfiddich for the win for composition and price, value, and availability, because the Shieldaig's only available at Total Wine. This is at all 3 of the big box stores. So, but here's the question though. The price, I mean, this is almost 3 times the price of the other one. Okay, Shieldaig for basically 23 bucks, or Glenfiddich for 65, depending on where you shop. Is the value 3 times better? Now that's a hard question. So for price, and value, Shieldaig may pull ahead there. But for availability, Glenfiddich is much more available. So that's a tough call. I'm going to say it's a tie. Now, if we have a tie on the taste test and we got to evaluate based on price, value, and availability, that's going to be a tough one. All right, let's get to the whiskeys now. And we'll start on my left. I have mixed these up so I don't know which is which. So we'll go ahead and nose these. Okay, I'm definitely getting a nose on this one. My nose is inadequate for the task. This is got an interesting nose. It's not sweet, it's not floral. I think I'm actually getting a little bit of barrel. That is an interesting nose. I'm not sure how to describe that. It's almost leather, wood. Wow. I'm not sure how to describe that. That's unlike most scotches. All right. What am I right? Not much of a nose. Maybe syrup? Did I accidentally pour Canadian whiskey here? Seriously, kind of a dark syrupy flavor going on with the nose. That's wild. All right. I'm going to say the one on the left had the stronger nose. And so the left whiskey wins the nosing. But figuring out what the nose was, that's beyond me. All right, so we'll taste with the weaker nose. So I'll go for the one on the right. Definitely single malt flavor. Again, kind of a darker flavor going on there. I mean, this is not really light and fruity. This is nice, and this is kind of in my taste spectrum. I tend to prefer whiskeys with that darker undertow going on. Malty. And it's mildly sweet. But I'm getting malt, I'm getting wood, almost leather. Wow, that's really quite good. That surprises me. I am so not the expert with single malts. I have very little experience with single malts. All right, rinse my mouth out a little bit. Some carbonated water, Topo Chico, really helps cleanse the palate. But for supper, about an hour ago, I had some super spicy chicken, and that can wreck your palate. So hope that's not affecting how things taste here. From the one on the left, now this tastes more like a Speyside. This is definitely lighter, brighter, fruity, getting still a little bit of the single malt flavor going on there, but that bold line of harshness that single malts have for me, and when I use the word harsh, that's not a negative term, it's bold. But most single malts have this bold line that goes right through the middle. Similarly to bourbons. Bourbons are known for being harsh, but it's a very strong, bold flavor that's almost universal in bourbons. It goes right through the middle. I get the same kind of thing, only it's a totally different flavor with single malts. The first one on the right had it. This one on the left doesn't. This is, in other words, this is very smooth. sweet, mild, heather. I'm actually getting more different flavors with the one on the left, but it's also definitely lighter. And so this is wild. I'm going to have to taste the one on the right again. So I'm actually getting more varied flavors on the one on the left. There's this one, darker, more wood, which is wild because on the nose, the one on the left smelled more wood. The one on the right did not. All right, personal preference then. Although I'm getting more flavors with the one on the left, the one on the right seems to be darker, richer in the leather wood vein that I tend to prefer. So I'm going to say right. The one on the right wins the taste. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish. This one will be a little bit tougher because the one on the right, I think, does have more of a mouthfeel and a burn. Not much of a burn, really. It's got that bold single malt line going through there. Neither of these has a burn. Both of these are very smooth. Neither of them has much of a finish either. Yeah, the one on the right's got a little bit stronger mouthfeel. It's got that bold streak going through there. The one on the left seems to actually have more of a finish, but it's more the sweet, floral, heathery finish, whereas the other one has got more of a barrel wood leather kind of finish. So which one do I prefer for mouthfeel, burn, and finish? I'm going to go with the one on the right. And so the left wins the nose, the one on the right wins the taste, mouthfeel, burn, and finish. So I think we have a winner with this one on the right. Now, can I determine which is which? I'm going to say the one on the right is the Glenfiddich, so that should be glass number 1. And I am correct. And then we have glass number 2 with the Shieldaig Speyside. So the winner is Glenfiddich. And properly guess which was which. So here's the winner, Glenfiddich14. Now you can make a case for saying, hey, was that even a fair fight? 14-year-old versus a non-age stated. I've learned that age doesn't always equate with flavor, taste, and preference for me. In this case it did, because the Glenfiddich came through with the wood flavors, the leather. I mean, it was kind of a syrup on the nose a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to say the 14 years helped it win, definitely. So there we go. All right, we have a winner. Now, what's up next on this channel? Well, I've got a little bit of Dewar's White Label left from all the sampling in this series, and I really need to finish it, because once it gets down to about, that much, you need to finish it. And something I've wanted to do is a Dewar's family feud between Dewar's White, Dewar's French Oak, and Caribbean Cask, and the Dewar's 12. See if I can tell them apart blind and determine which one I prefer the most. So that will be next on Blended Scotch Reviews. Out here.